Cutting Edge on TV, promoting the bright idea.
On Industry Conversation today, we have the Chief Executive Officer, Red Media Africa, Ayodeji Razaq. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Good to be here. Excited to be here too.
What's your assessment of the current growth rates of the market size of the PR industry in Nigeria?
Well, it's been rather interesting. I mean, the market is currently $150 million, and to be very honest, most experts and industry watchers will tell you that for PR and PR agencies, it seems that the market is shrinking. And there are mitigating factors for that, but it is something to expect. I mean, we're moving to a kind of new world era in terms of how we communicate and how stories are being told. So, of course, we should expect that there will be changes in how we see and read the numbers.
What role do you think technology plays in accelerating the growth in this industry?
Because we are in an era where everybody is a storyteller and everybody has social media and can obviously shape narrative, we are at that point where there is a need for agencies and for organizations to start to, evolve and create new ways of how they're telling their stories, and more importantly, how these stories are being managed on social media, because we are in a whole new world.
So we've been talking about growth. What challenges do you see in this industry?
The first is the fact that everybody with a phone can tell a story. And image making is really about what kind of stories you want to be told. Just coming in here today, I was on social media and I saw a little bit of a battle between Mercedes, BMW, BYD, that's the EV giants, and I think there's one of Audi. And it's really interesting that all of this played out on social media. Brands are communicating differently. Brands are becoming more human in how they communicate. And because the brands are more humanized in how they're telling their stories, it means that the barrier for entry is a lot lower. Before, you could stand back and speak authoritatively as a brand. Now you have to speak in a way that the audience understands. You have to communicate in a language that the audience, so we're not just dealing with the fact that the communication channels have changed, and more importantly, they have become more democratized, if we must use that word. And we're dealing in a situation whereby we don't necessarily just have new communication channels, we now also have new audiences. So we're dealing with an audience who do not want to be sold to, who do not want to be told how to steal. And so a lot of the brands right now have to not just become human, they have to become young. There's a need to speak to a younger age. In Nigeria right now, the youth population makes up over 60% of the population. And what that means is that if you're a brand that's over 50, 60 years old, typically your legacy conversations can no longer work, because the audiences that you're speaking to they grew up on you, they grew up using your brands, but they become, they're a lot more independent in how they want to be told what to buy, what to drink, and how to consume. And what that means is that as a brand, you have to create new ways of reaching them. It's an exciting new world, and I'm excited to be a part of this journey.
There's this new trend of poaching professionals now. What are your thoughts about this?
So we live in an industry where, like I said, it's no longer as it used to be. Everybody is a marketer. You would go on social media, everybody's a content creator. Content creation is the core of what we do as storytelling. Everybody's content is an influencer. So if I'm trying to sell a product, if the entire audience you're reaching out to speaks content is an influencer, what then that means everybody's an expert. So the actual experts that we have within the industry, people who actually gone to school, understand marketing and communications and journalism, a lot of them are seeing new ways to create and earn. What then that means that we have even lesser professionals within the space, and then the few that we have are poached by other agencies, and it's now an agency war where we're almost in a talent battle. And it's not just limited to Nigeria, it's a global problem. However, what we do see is that it then means that there's a skill gap, and then what it means is that the rest of us who are in the space have to do a lot more work to bring younger people into the market and bring young people into the industry. It's challenging. Would I rather not lose people? Absolutely. But it is what it is. I would rather not. I mean, just last week we lost a fantastic hand in here, and every other month I'm hearing somebody has left. And so they're not just living into agencies now; they're even crossing out of the market and creating a whole new market. Because, like I said, we have whole new audiences, and everybody's creating whole new ways of communicating. It's harder, but
This is what it is.
it is what it is.
So does this have any impact on the industry as a whole?
Of course, absolutely. What it then means that we need more trainings. We need more support from all kinds of stakeholders. And I'm not just meaning trainings. We do a lot of trainings as an organization. Well, I mean, at Red, one thing that one is driven us is that we always train young people. We are the hub for young people who want to learn. I think I receive more requests for internships than I receive mails from my clients. I think I get almost 50 mails daily from schools, from people who want to join the industry. It means that there's room for a lot more trainings. A lot of credit must go to organizations like the NIPR, who are doing regular master classes and trying to do trainings to bring young people into the industry. We also need a lot of people who have gone before to come back and actually pay some, pay back, not just pay forward now, but pay back, because we need more people to train and lend their voice to getting people into the industry. But do we have a lot of people who really want to stay in the industry? So what I see, and this is the trend that we've seen over the past couple of years, people come in, take the learnings, and then realize that, I can go out there and be an influencer and content creator. So they take all of the small learnings and they move. I was sitting in a meeting the other day with Stephanie Busari, and she was mentioning how journalists are no longer as passionate. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation in the industry. There's fake news. The barrier for entry for knowledge and for sharing information is so low that I can go on social media now, just tweet something, and it becomes news. Where people are no longer paying attention to facts and truth. And that gap, what then that means is that even though we have actual journalists in the stories, the share of voice is lower. But it's exciting because it then now means that people like us have more work to do, in quotes. And I don't mean work like work, revenue work, but actual work in terms of telling the right, authentic stories, even about little things as our country.
Aside training, how can we retain top talents? We know they want to move out, but how can we retain them so we have more people, we have people in the industry who are still interested in the job?
Like I mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, we have a shrinking market for PR. A lot of organizations do not take PR. They treat it as an afterthought conversation. When they're talking marketing, they tell all the advertising and all that. And in PR, it's like, those guys, give them something. One way to fix the brain drain is to pay more, obviously. It's almost an industry of service now where, the thank yous are gotten in heaven, because it's not as lucrative as it used to be a journalist or to be a storyteller. Digital marketing is all the fad. And what then that means is that even though PR in itself relies on digital data, it's now very data driven, it's analytics and data driven. It's no longer just telling stories for the sake of it. It's like understanding what the audiences are about and telling the right kind of stories. Writing the right kind of narrative and shaping the right kind of conversations. I mean, crisis communication is hard. Crisis management is hard. It's a lot of technical work. But one way to retain talent is to ensure that first and foremost they are better paid. And we try, but better pay also means we have to charge more. And in a market where it seems like the portfolio for PR is shrinking, you have to also be careful that you don't price out the market. Another way to do that is it needs to become a little more exciting and a little more robust. The work needs to not look like grind work. And we do that here at Red. A lot of our storytelling, a lot of our conversations allow our people the opportunity to actually be excited about the work. I say it every time, a lot of the young people that work with us, even though we are working on projects that might look mundane, we had a bit of fun to it, to make it a little bit exciting. If the industry is exciting, people stay. People stay at jobs that they love. And I think the final element is to ensure that the young people themselves get credit for the work. I think that's something that came very strongly when I started to engage my team. I realized that a lot of them, as an agency expert working on the agency side of communications, you almost never get credit for your work. You do a lot of amazing work and nobody, and validation is easier now. Growing up and in the early days before the advent of social media, and especially social media actually in Nigeria, you could get your validation down the line because people recognize you. But now you can get validation in 2 minutes. If you tell the right story on social media, if you get the right credit, you get instant validation. So we try to make sure that our people get as much validation for the incredible work that they do, because it allows them some level of self-appreciation for the work that they do, and then allow them to stay longer with us and within the industry.
How has regulatory laws and reforms impacted the sector?
I'm looking for a creative way to answer that question without stepping on people's foot. We do need better regulation. I'm going to say it. Like I said, there's a lot of fake news, and nobody seems to be thinking about it. It almost a sense of, we can't do anything about it. But I think that we can. If some platform or some organization puts out a story that is not true, I think the least that the regulatory bodies can do is actually provide some sort of stern deterrents. But what happens is that there are no deterrents. People say things that are very untrue or write stories that are half-baked. For example, someone says XYZ company did XYZ to them. The correct thing in basic journalism is that you get both sides of the story and put it out there. Not just get both sides of the story for your knowledge. Put both sides out there so that the consuming audience can have informed information. What happens is, it's almost like a forced to print type conversation where one person goes, tells their side of the story, a print platform, publication platform runs with it without even the simple disclaimer to say, we tried to reach XYZ and they did not provide context, which allows for them to know, okay, there might be a second party, but they just run it as by the time you start to provide rebuttal conversations and say this is not true, you look like a liar, because they've gone first to market advantage. And I feel like regulatory bodies can step in here and at least mitigate for such kind of things. If a platform does that, sanction them.
Do you think the image making landscape can work closely with regulatory bodies in developing more of these laws?
Absolutely. I think that there needs to be a lot more involvement from both parties. Can we be a lot more involved? Can we be a lot more engaged? Yes, absolutely. I think that if agencies and organizations sit together with regulatory bodies, we can find ways to tighten up this process and allow for, first, more transparency, and most importantly, stronger regulatory laws that allows our country to sell the right kinds of stories. So someone doesn't go on social media and post a picture that is not the full picture just because they want to generate clicks, because that's what's happening.
The Nigerian economic subsector of the PR industry, how is it perceived?
Honestly speaking, I think there is an appreciation for the work we do, but there's an option to pay the value. And I think that's the real, that's the real dissonance in this conversation. People actually appreciate the work we do. Organizations have PR agencies on retainer. It's because they value the work. The real question is, do they value it enough to pay top dollar? Nobody wants bad news. Nobody wants bad press. So everybody pays for quality press. But will they pay top value? They underprice because they would rather pay for, a lot of people treat PR as an afterthought mechanism. You must have it, but only as a deterrent. So in the case something goes wrong, when in reality we should be on front foot PR. Yeah. Great organizations know you step on the front foot and do it first. And I think that's where the dissonance is. If we can get to that level of front foot, conversations where we are at the forefront of this conversation before the press goes bad. As a matter of fact, not just press going bad, in shaping the actual quality image. So it's not driven by just the ads you put out, but also driven by how people perceive you. A number of brands are in that space, and I'm not going to mention any names, but a number of brands are in that space. And most of them, I think that if a lot more brands get there, we would have even a bigger narrative for the country as a whole. But we always wait until it is on the flip side of the coin. They're like, oh, let's go PR so that they can help us clean up the image, when we should be actually putting out our best foot every time.
In serving value to clients, what should PR professionals have on their mind that this and this should be done in serving value to clients?
One is this: always remember, you're a storyteller. As a PR professional, you're a storyteller first and foremost. And as a storyteller, it's what is most important, that you tell the most authentic story that paints your brand or your clients, in the best light. I think a number of PR professionals understand that narrative and try to do that, which is regardless of how this coin is falling, your job is to tell the right story. Most times, a lot of people want to tell the good story. They're not telling a good story and the right story. The right story is one who allows the consumers and the people who are listening to your voice connect with your truth. It doesn't necessarily have to be the good story. It just has to be the right story. And I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, you are. But yeah, we're talking about, earlier we talked about the economy, making more money. So what if the right story isn't necessarily the story that sells?
Every good storyteller knows this. If a story sells today, it doesn't mean it's going to help you stay in the market tomorrow. For example, we can sell a story of how Nigeria has recovered economically. We can have all our journalists in the country write, mandate, they must talk about it. Down the line, if the economy has not truly recovered, what happens?
Goes back, okay.
So it is not the story that's important, it's telling the authentic story. Is Nigeria on an economic recovery path? Yes. Can we show evidence to that? Yes. Can we tell a story to show that? Yes. That is the right story. A good story is that Nigeria is great. It would get you traction, make you money for a short period. But you know how they say, if you want to go far, then you have to do it right.
What inspired you to start a career in PR?
I started my career in marketing as a whole. I started as a digital expert. I did digital marketing, so I do understand the field. And then I branched out into experiential and events. I've done the whole 9 yards. Now, I realized that to tie the entire scope together, I need to understand how all of these journeys shape up to make a brand what it is. And that's what communications is about. And for me, coming into marketing as a whole was it's a bit of a long story, but I'll put it like this. I realized that if I'm going to make an impact in any kind of industry, I need to understand the people. When I was trying to choose a career very early in life and I was trying to get into university, I realized that what I wanted the most was to understand people. And in doing that, I figured, what's the best way to do that? I went and studied psychology. Psychology is the understanding of people. Psychology is knowing how the human behavior works. In fixing that and figuring that out, when I was psychology, I realized I could have become a sports psychologist. I could become a coach. For example, I love football so much that I talk tactics day and night. I mean, I can talk to you about how this is playing. I'm watching a football match and people are thinking, why are you watching like that? I don't watch football match to see how they score. I want to see where that guy was running to. Why did he run in that direction? I try to understand processes. And in that space, I realized that my true passion was I wanted to understand why people did what they did. And when I found myself in digital marketing as one of my early first jobs, I realized the way to really tell or market any product is to understand why the consumer wants it. It was quite easy. People used to ask me why it was so easy. I'm like, it's simple, just know why they want it. Why would a consumer pick red instead of blue? It's simple. Check the numbers. Which sells the most? What the girls like? It sounds like, for me, it sounds like 1 + 1. Why did you wear this color today? I can almost spend time with someone and say, I know why you did it. It's not, people say all kinds of things, so I was feeling the mood. I'm like, there are key factors and there are cues that work in your life that show you how a person would behave. That was what brought me into marketing. And I'm like, okay, I can do more in this industry because it seems quite easy. People do things because they are precedents. And that journey brought me here. And I'm like, okay, how do we make sure that I can make people see why they are doing what they're doing? It was communication. So
studying psychology, marketing, now PR, the journey all through.
All of it ties into one thing: understanding the human person.
Okay, so would you say it has helped you in leading a consulting firm?
Yes, it has, significantly. It's very interesting because I read a lot. This morning I was reading an article by a brilliant friend of mine, Abiola Salami. He put it in the Vanguard or something, and it was about a CFO that became a CEO. And now it was about how do you transit from being person who is in the numbers. The CFO knows numbers. They are interested in how 2 plus 2 happen. How do you translate that energy to becoming a CEO? A CEO doesn't care for numbers. I mean, they do, but your core of your work is not only in the numbers, it's in the people. You have to know the people. And me, where I'm sitting now, the greatest strength I always tell people is the people that work with us. And the reason is simple. If I cannot connect with the cleaner, if the cleaner does not trust me implicitly, trust my decision, and trust why I say, don't show up at this time, clean at this time, shut down. If she doesn't trust that decision-making process, we would all fail. So my job is to convince everybody that I understand what they need to do best. And to do that, I need to understand why they show up the way they are. So imagine working with, I have a team of close to 60 people. Imagine working with this group and saying, I know why you have to do it this way. People ask, for the longest time, most companies are going into work from home. They started work from home in COVID. When we started our business, we've had work from home. It's always been in the system. Because we understand that the human being always just feels a little better. Just give them a little more and they will give you a lot more. So it's that 1%. We look for the 1% opportunity and we sit with our team and say, how best can we find the 1% space? How best can we do more? How best can we give you 1% more back so that you can give us a little more? Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is 5 letters. Extra.
I like that.
Marketing Edge on TV, promoting the bright idea.
That's all we can take. Join us again next week for the concluding part of the conversation with Ayodeji Razaq. I am Bababumi Agbibi.